AITA for exposing my sister after she threatened to cut me off from Grandma's trust? Morgan had a voice that cut through the phone like ice. I am going to tell you clearly, Harper. Either you get in your car right now, drive back out to the suburbs and watch the kids for me this weekend, or I swear I will call Mom to pressure Grandma into cutting off your trust fund. Is that clear enough? I was sitting in the quiet of my rented room near the university campus. Outside, the constant hum of the city could be heard. Buses passing, a stray honk, the buzz of the avenue like a river that never stops. On the desk I had my notes open, textbooks piled up, pages highlighted in neon yellow. Monday was organic chemistry, Tuesday was animal physiology. That weekend was not a weekend. It was the bridge between sustaining my scholarship or sinking. You heard me, right? Morgan insisted. She lowered her voice, as if doing me a favor by speaking slowly. Do you watch them, or do you lose your degree? I felt my heart beating against my ribs like a bird trapped in a cage. It was an old learned fear. The fear that they would snatch away the only thing holding me up. But this time, instead of shrinking, I breathed slowly, and the strangest thing was that my hand did not tremble. My finger, surprisingly steady, touched the screen. Wait just a second, Morgan, I said with a calm that resembled nothing of what I felt inside. Is there someone who wants to say hi to you? I am going to put Grandma on conference. A soft click was heard, like a change of air on the line, and then silence. I waited. Hello. My grandmother's voice, warm and familiar, came through the speaker. Harper, my child. On the other side, Morgan went mute. A hard silence of an animal caught in the headlights. Hi, Grandma, I said, now with a clear voice. Sorry to bring you in like this, but I am on a call with Morgan. She just told me something about Grandpa's trust fund, and I think you, as the administrator, need to hear it. I breathed. Morgan, can you repeat what you just told me? Morgan's silence was so heavy it could almost be touched. Only her short, nervous breathing could be heard. Morgan. My grandmother no longer sounded sweet. It was that cold, exact voice she used when establishing order. What is happening? It is nothing, Grandma, Morgan stammered with a tiny voice that was not her usual one. A misunderstanding. Harper is exaggerating. I don't think so, I said. I lifted a printed sheet I had folded on the desk with phrases underlined in marker. Grandma, I have the trust fund document here. There is a section on coercion and undue influence. I will not read it all to you, just the important part. It says that if a beneficiary uses the promise of funds or the threat of withdrawing them to pressure another beneficiary, you can suspend disbursements to the person doing the coercing. On the line, a sound like a choke, a gasp was heard. It was Morgan. And then my grandmother spoke, and her voice went to zero. Morgan, she said slowly, pronouncing every syllable as if nailing it to the table. Are you telling me you are threatening your sister with my money? Grandma, no. I was not. Morgan was already crying. Broken. You were not. What? My grandmother's voice did not move an inch. You were not trying to scare her with the trust fund so she would watch your kids? The sound of sobs filled the line, and I stayed there listening, not wanting to humiliate, but with something stranger, relief. As if a weight I had carried without realizing it was suddenly taken off me. But to understand why that call changed everything, we have to go back to where it started. Morgan and I were born 8 years apart, but I have always felt we did not grow up in the same house, even though we shared the same parents. Morgan was the storm. I was the silence after. She was always noise, immediate emotion, urgent need. I learned very young to make myself small, not to get in the way, to sit in a corner with a book so no one would ask me for anything. Without realizing it, being quiet became my way of surviving. Our history was marked even more when it came to school. My grandfather Arthur, rest in peace, was a tough but fair man, convinced that education was the only real way to change your life. He died when I was 10 and left a trust fund, a fund managed with a specific purpose. It was not a free gift. It was his legacy, money set aside for the university education of his 2 granddaughters. But there was a condition. The money was not handled by my parents. It was administered by my grandmother Evelyn. And my grandmother Evelyn was loving, yes, but she was also strict with what Grandpa had left in writing. If Grandpa said it was for school, it was for school. When Morgan turned 18, she touched that money first. She enrolled in a cosmetology school, got a styling license, took some courses, then got married, got pregnant, and her life went in another direction. For her, the trust fund became a blurry memory. A thing there, something she had used a little and barely mentioned anymore. For me, it was everything. For me, it was the door, because my dream was not just to go to college. My dream was to study veterinary medicine. I wanted to be a veterinarian since I was a child, since I found stray dogs and left them water in a plastic container. It was a specific, difficult, and expensive dream, and I knew perfectly well my parents could not pay for it. Not because they were bad, not for lack of love, simply because it was not enough. There were bills, debts, constant stress. So I studied. I became the responsible daughter. The one who did not ask, the one who did not cause drama, the one who got good grades, the one who deserved Grandpa Arthur's trust fund because I was fulfilling what he had wanted. But my silence was confused with availability. As soon as my nephews, Liam and Noah, grew enough to be a whirlwind with sticky hands and infinite energy, I became the automatic solution. My high school years mix in my head like the same repeated weekend. Being at Morgan's house in the suburbs with the television on, fights over toys, spilled cups, and me trying to do homework with a child climbing on my back. "It is your family," my mom would say with that soft but firm tone that was not a question. "Help out, it does not cost you anything." And the biggest rule was always the same. Morgan's life as a mom was what was important. My things as a student were always flexible. The cruelest proof of that was when I was 16. I had been preparing for months for a state selection exam, for a major science competition. It was the first thing I felt was truly mine, the first thing that brought me closer to my future. The exam was on a Saturday morning. I had everything ready. My notes, my calculator, my ID, the route to get there early. Friday night, Morgan called. She did not sound sad. She sounded desperate in the way Morgan sounded when she wanted something. Her husband had a terrible flu, she said. She was exhausted. "I just need you to come tomorrow," she told me, "even if it is just for a few hours." I tried to explain about the exam, how important it was, how hard it had been to get there. My mom heard the conversation from the kitchen and took the phone from my hands. "Harper, do not be selfish," she said softly, as if educating me. "Your sister needs you. There will be more opportunities." There were no more opportunities. Not that year, not for that phase. I did not go to the exam. I spent that Saturday watching cartoons with Liam, who was barely walking back then, and making sandwiches so he would not cry. And while the kids laughed at something I did not even understand, I felt a slow, deep hollow installing itself in my chest like a sadness that had no name. Morgan did not thank me. No one mentioned it again. It was just another sacrifice swallowed by the family. Another piece of my future placed beneath my sister's fatigue. When I finally entered the university 2 years later, I thought it would change. I thought being in the city at another rhythm would protect me. And partly, yes, I had been in the program for 2 years. I already had hard classes, labs, internships. The main university library became my refuge. A silent place where everything had order, where pages did not demand more from you than you could give. I lived tight, a small studio apartment, fair rent, counted transport money. The scholarship and the trust fund are not extra money, but they sustain me. And that is why I guard my grades as if they were oxygen. But family does not stay behind just because you move. The week before midterms felt like always. Short nights, cheap coffee, notes scribbled until exhaustion. I was stuck at a table in the back of the library between organic chemistry and physiology when my cell phone vibrated and broke the silence. It was Morgan. My stomach tightened automatically, as if my body knew before I did. "Harper, thank God you picked up," she said without a greeting. "With urgency. You have to help me. It is an emergency." I squeezed the bridge of my nose. My head already hurt. "Morgan, I am in the library. I have midterms." "What happened?" "Jason got notified. He just left. They changed everything on him and he has to fly to Seattle for work. He leaves tomorrow morning and returns Monday. And I have my retreat." "What retreat?" "My yoga retreat," she said as if it were obvious. "The one I have been planning for 6 months with my friends is already paid for. I cannot lose it." I breathed, trying to stay calm. "Morgan, I cannot. I have 3 exams next week. Organic on Monday, physiology on Tuesday, And another one on Wednesday. I need this weekend to study. I cannot lose even a day. There was a silence, but not of understanding, of offense. Are you seriously telling me no? She asked finally, and her voice already came with an edge. For an exam? It is not an exam, I told her, feeling my blood boil. My grades and my scholarship depend on this. My future depends on this. Oh, do not be dramatic, she mocked. It is a weekend. You have always been smart. Stay up late and that is it. But I need this. I actually have a heavy life. You spend your time in the library. I do not spend my time. Came out harder than I planned. And no, I do not owe you anything. Of course you owe me. She blurted out as if she had reminded me of a universal truth. You are my sister, and besides, do not waste my time. I am bringing the kids to you tomorrow. I froze. Morgan, I live near campus, I told her. Do you really plan to come drop them off here? Yes, she replied as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Around 5. I thought about that time in the city, the traffic. At that time the interstate is a parking lot, I told her. Well, deal with it, she cut in. Have something for them to eat. You know Liam gets unbearable if he does not eat on time. And she hung up. I stayed staring at the black screen of the cell phone, as if I could find an explanation there. She had not asked, she had informed. My midterms, my degree, my scholarship were a minor nuisance compared to her plan. The tiredness that fell over me was not from sleep, it was a tiredness of the soul. Of years of fighting a fight they would not let me win. I looked at my books, my underlined sheets, my notes that were hundreds of hours of work, and then I saw the photo on my screen. My grandmother Evelyn and I smiling the day I came to study. Her hugging me tight, proud. There, seeing her face, something moved inside me. It was not just anger. It was a cold determination. Called, but not my mom. I looked for my grandmother's contact and pressed call. When she answered, her voice welcomed me as always, with that warmth that made me feel I was not alone. Harper, how are you, my child? Hi, Grandma, I said, forcing a cheerful tone as I walked out of the library. It was late and getting cool. The autumn air hit my face as if waking me up. I just wanted to say hi. How are your midterms going? Buried in books, right? Yes, I lied, swallowing the lump in my throat. But I am getting there. We talked about her garden, a movie she had seen, how the weather was weird. She told me Grandpa would be proud, that my effort was worth it. Your education was extremely important to him, she told me softly. He wanted you to have the freedom to be whatever you wanted to be. The irony pierced my stomach like a punch. There was the woman whose name they used as a weapon against me, reminding me that this money was made to liberate me, not to tie me down. And yet, I did not tell her the truth in that moment. Not for lack of trust, but out of shame, out of habit, out of years of learning that don't make problems was the way to survive. I hung up and stood for a moment on the library stairs with a deep sadness weighing on my shoulders. My grandmother had no idea how Morgan and my mom twisted everything. Still, I tried once more. I called my mom, still with a ridiculous little piece of hope that she would defend me. She did not. As soon as I explained, my mom started with her usual speech. Look, Harper, she said with that tired tone she used to make me feel guilty. You do not understand the pressure your sister lives under. She has 2 kids. She never rests. That retreat is important for her mental health. And my midterms do not matter? I responded, my voice trembling with anger. My scholarship depends on my average. If I do poorly, I do not know how I am going to keep paying rent, transport, materials. You are exaggerating. She sighed. You are young. You will recover. Besides, it is a weekend. You will not die from helping. Family supports each other. Family supports each other when it is even, I said, but I already knew I was talking to a wall. Your sister needs you right now, my mom concluded. And you have always been the one who understands. The one who understands, the one who adapts, the one who sacrifices. The call ended with my mom telling me not to be selfish and to call Morgan to fix it. The next day, something happened that finished breaking what little patience I had left. I was in my room when a call came in from Morgan. I did not answer. I was going to reject it, but the call stayed open for a few seconds, as if she had pressed the button wrong. Road noise could be heard. And then Morgan's voice talking on the hands-free system. I was going to hang up when I heard my name. No, it is already resolved, Morgan was saying with a sure, almost amused voice. I had to pull the trust fund card on her. Honestly, what a hassle. I have to threaten her with grandma's stuff so she moves. Otherwise, she gets very dignified with her exams. So selfish. I froze. It was not desperation, it was strategy. It was not that she could not, it was that she wanted to win. And she said it as if it were funny. My compassion turned off, it dried up. I hung up, sat in front of the computer, and searched for the trust fund file my grandmother had sent me when I entered the university. A long document with small print, the kind that makes you lazy to read unless you are desperate. I had saved it without reviewing it completely because at that moment I did not imagine I was going to need it as a shield. That night I read it line by line. My eyes looked for one thing that Grandpa Arthur was famous for putting in everything. A protection clause, a kind of just in case. And I found it. Clause 7b. Coercion and undue influence. I felt my heart change rhythm, not fast, not like fear, but like something settling into place. Like when you finally realize you do have a way out. I printed the section, underlined key phrases with a marker, folded the sheet, and left it at hand on top of my notes as if it were an amulet. My plan was simple. Wait for Morgan to make the last move. The call came on Saturday morning, just when I was starting a strong study session. I had the coffee cup next to me, and pale light was coming in the window. The traffic outside was not roaring yet like at midday. It was Morgan. I answered. Hi, little sister. She sang with a fake sweetness that felt like an alarm. I am already packing the kids' backpacks. We are leaving in a bit. Hey, have something ready for them. Yes. And remember, Liam gets terrible if he does not eat in the afternoon. I looked at my note. I looked at the sheet with the underlined section. Morgan, I said slowly. I told you I cannot this weekend. I have midterms. Her mask fell off. We are not going to talk about this anymore, Harper. She let out dryly. I am going to my retreat. You are going to watch your nephews. It is not a question. And I am telling you no. I responded softly but firmly. I am not going to risk my exams because you want to go with your friends. Her inhalation was heard like a lighter before lighting up. You are an ingrate, she hissed. After everything the family does for you, after paying for your education, this is how you pay. It is not the family that pays for my education, I corrected her. It is Grandpa's trust fund administered by Grandma. Exactly. She jumped as if she had found the right button. And that money can run out. Do you think Grandma is going to keep paying for a selfish granddaughter who does not even help her sister for a weekend? There was the final blow. The exact moment. I let the silence stretch for a second. You know what, Morgan? I said with a calm, almost polite tone. That is a good question. I don't know what Grandma would think if she heard this either. Why don't we ask her? What are you talking about? She mocked. You wouldn't dare. Of course I would, I responded. And I let her continue because she finished sinking herself all on her own. I am going to tell you clearly, Harper, she said without noticing the cliff. Either you get in your car, come back here and watch the kids for me this weekend, or I call Mom so Grandma cuts off your trust fund. Do you watch them? Or do you lose your degree? I breathed once and pressed the button. Wait just a second, Morgan, I said. I am going to add Grandma to the call. Click. Hello, Grandma, I said with a firm voice. Sorry to bring you in like this, but I am on a call with Morgan. She is telling me something about the trust fund, and I think you should hear it. A pause. Morgan, repeat what you just told me. Grandmother Evelyn stayed silent for a second, then cold. Morgan, what does this mean? It is nothing, Grandma. Morgan wanted to fix it. Harper is exaggerating. I don't think so, I answered. Grandma, I read a section of the trust fund about coercion and undue influence. I will put it simply. If someone uses the money as a threat to pressure another person, you can suspend disbursements and support to the one doing the blackmailing. Morgan's breathing broke, and my grandmother became sharp. Morgan, are you threatening your sister with my money? Grandma, My grandmother did not give her space to play the victim. Your grandfather detested bullies, she said with a calm that was scarier than a scream. He put that protection there for a reason. And if you think you are going to use his legacy to blackmail your sister and scare her, so she solves your life, you are very mistaken. I did not want to. Morgan sobbed. You did not want what? My grandmother cut her off. You did not want to threaten her to go to your retreat even though she has exams? Ugly, desperate crying was heard, like when someone realizes they no longer have control. The call did not end with a slammed door. It ended with a firm, definitive click from my grandmother. I managed to hear her say, Morgan, we will talk about this when you can speak like an adult. Right now Harper has to study. Do not bother her again this weekend. And then to me her voice softened just barely, like a hand on the shoulder. Harper, you study. I will handle it. And she hung up. The silence that remained afterward was strange. I stayed looking at the cell phone, waiting for the tsunami. Calls from my mom, furious messages, tearful voice notes, threats. It did not happen. Nothing arrived. As if someone had turned off a device that had been making noise in my life for years. First, that silence scared me. I checked the cell phone every so often as if it were suddenly going to explode. But the only thing that existed was my room, my books, my midterms, and a new calm. I studied. I studied like never before, with a clean mind, without that anxiety of waiting for the next demand. I got a very good grade in organic on Monday. I came out of physiology on Tuesday with the feeling that I was finally breathing fully. The reality check arrived a week later. Not from my mom, not from Morgan, but from my grandmother. She called me on Wednesday as always. Hello, she said without beating around the bush. I had a quite enlightening conversation with your mom and Morgan. She told me she had gone to their house the day after the call. That she sat them down at the kitchen table like when one is a child. That she explained to them calmly, and without raising her voice, how the trust fund works. That she reminded them of Grandpa's instructions and the section on coercion. Your mom turned pale, my grandmother told me. Not because of what Morgan did to you, but at the idea that there would be consequences. My grandmother took a deep breath before continuing. I am not going to apply the harshest measure right now, she said. I do not want the children to pay for their mother's decisions, but they have been warned. One more time. And yes, then supports are suspended. Without discussion. Then she explained what she did decide to do from that moment, and it was what calmed me the most. I set rules, she said. Clear rules. First, no one mentions the trust fund as a threat ever again, not even as a joke. Second, you are not asked to babysit during exam week. Period. Third, if Morgan needs help, she hires and pays someone. Family is no longer used as an excuse to load everything onto you. And fourth, if your mom wants to give an opinion, she better start by supporting you too, because a mother does not sacrifice one daughter to keep the other one comfortable. That weekend, when the stress of midterms had passed, a package arrived at my apartment, big and heavy. I opened it, and it was a nice basket full of good coffee, snacks, granola bars, notebooks, markers, a thermos, simple things but curated. Inside came a card with my grandmother's elegant handwriting. For my future veterinarian, it said. No one interrupts you here. With love, your grandma. I stayed looking at those words with a lump in my throat that left me breathless. It was not just a gift, it was a shield. It was someone saying, finally I am on your side. Without conditions. With Morgan things changed. Not overnight with hugs and pretty tears, no. The power changed. She sent me a letter of apology. Yes, it was formal, cold, as if dictated, full of phrases like I regret what occurred, and I recognize poor judgment. It did not sound sincere, but it did not have to sound that way. It was a sign that she now understood there was a limit. And the most important thing was the practical aspect. She stopped calling me for emergencies. If she has a need, she hires a neighbor, a nanny, a service. She pays, she organizes herself. Our relationship became different, more distant, more careful. There is no longer warm trust, but there is a new respect placed by force, and for the first time there is space. Months later, my semester grades arrived, good, solid, the ones I needed to keep the scholarship. A week later, they confirmed the renewal. I was sitting on a bench on campus with the warm sun hitting my face, watching students pass with backpacks and coffee in hand, as if the world were full of options. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that my life was indeed mine. For years I had believed that my education was a favor they could take away if I did not obey, that power was in the money, that I had to behave well to deserve it. But that weekend when I put my grandmother on speakerphone, I understood something that changed me on the inside. Power was not in the money. Power was in the truth. And I also learned this. When someone threatens you, the threat only works while you keep it in silence. As soon as you put it out loud in front of the one who really has authority, it falls apart. For a long time, I thought that keeping the peace in my family meant making myself smaller, putting my dreams last, being the one who always yields. Now I know that true peace is not built with forced sacrifices. It is built when everyone is allowed to grow without being punished for wanting a life of their own. And if someone had told me before that I had the right to say no, and that saying no did not make me a bad daughter or a bad sister or selfish, maybe I would have saved myself years of carrying a cage that was not even mine. But at least I know it now, and I am never getting back in there. Comment. Sometimes we confuse being a good person with having no boundaries. We often carry burdens that are not ours simply because we are afraid to speak up. Please remember that your dreams and your mental health are just as valuable as anyone else's needs. Saying no to unreasonable demands does not make you selfish or ungrateful. True peace comes from mutual respect, not from one person constantly sacrificing their well-being. It is amazing how quickly manipulation loses its power when you finally bring it into the light. Real love supports your growth instead of holding you back with guilt. You have the right to protect your future and define your own path. I hope you find the courage to stand up for yourself and claim the life you deserve. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.